Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Taya master Anne-Marie Young. This is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And you all probably noticed that my voice is actually starting to sound more like me than it did last week. Because yes, I am feeling a little bit better. This is one of those summer colds, you know, the kind of jumps on you and then it hangs on for a bit, and that's the way it's been for the last few days. But I've been trying to maintain that good positive attitude and looking forward to doing the first show of the week here with my friend Anne-Marie, who I haven't talked to in a couple of weeks. How you doing, Marie?
I'm doing very well. I'm glad to hear you're getting better. Summer colds can be brutal.
Well, they really can be, yeah. But this one's not been too bad. It's just been, you know, one of those irritating things that just kind of drains all the energy out of you. So I just been working on building energy for the last 5 days or so. But no, it's getting better.
Makes a difference.
And it sounds better. My voice actually starts to sound a little more like me. If you had listened to the episodes from last week, you would have said, "Who was that?" Because I mean, I was just so far down in the register. It was crazy. But anyway, we have a guest joining us today. Her name is Deb Curtis, and Deb has a interesting and varied background that she'll tell us about in a moment. But one of the things that really intrigued me about her when I first encountered her is that she helps people who often come from different racial, ethnic backgrounds and so forth, who can often face extra challenges in life. She's found an interesting way to help those people to succeed. She takes these individuals and helps them take over and run successful, established small businesses. Now, that's kind of an unusual thing. Usually we hear people talking about, well, start your own business. Here's how to do it. Here are things that have successfully worked for people. But that's a smart angle, taking over an existing business, because that's something that has already been demonstrated to work in and of itself. So I'm going to be curious to know more about that story. But Deb, thank you for joining us on the program today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Anne-Marie, nice to meet you. Walt, don't worry about the low voice. It was funny. I was watching on the Disney app yesterday, Elton John's, one of his concerts from his final tour. And he doesn't hit the high notes like he used to when he was younger. And I think
many of us don't. No, it's true. Even the falsetto doesn't work after a while.
Oh, my goodness. What an incredible show, though. It was at the Dodger Stadium, and it was live. If anybody loves Elton John, you got to catch that on Disney. That man can play piano like crazy. It's just it's sad to see some of these great artists doing their final tours. I love Aerosmith, so they just announced a few months ago their farewell tour. So I have to get out to go see Steven Tyler and Joe Perry.
There you go. All right.
Are you with me, Anne-Marie? You like them too?
I just love live music. I'll go and watch pretty much anybody. I mean, I'm a big Foo Fighters fan. But I've seen Elton John in concert before. I've just seen so many different people, but I just love music, just in general.
Wow. That's incredible. If you saw Elton John, my husband and I were like, man, we had our whole life, Walt, to see Elton John and some big names. I'm 56 years old. And for all the younger ones out there, go see live acts, go see the people, because you'll always say that you will, and then you don't. So, although it is expensive if you want good tickets.
Okay. Well, I'm off to see the Chili Peppers next month, so I'm excited about that.
I love how you say that. What kind of band what was the band name again?
The Chili Peppers.
I love how you say that. Oh, it's so cute. And I'm sure you're laughing at my accent just as much, or if I have one, I don't know. Okay, I got off track.
We do that all the time. Welcome to the program. I mean, seriously, that's the way it goes around here. We go off track, then we go down rabbit holes, then we climb out and we say, okay, what was the topic again? I don't remember what it was. Yeah, that's the way it usually goes.
Reel her back in. Oh,
so, all right, let's go. Speaking of reeling it back in, let's go back and tell your story, because like I said, it led up to an interesting thing where you're helping people by buying established small businesses, which is a really interesting angle. So how did you get to that point?
Yes. So 30 years in corporate, before I left and ramped up my own small business. I established my small business in 2018, and I would suggest this to anybody. Don't rely anymore these days just on corporate employment. You know, many years ago, perhaps in the 90s, you could say, and Walt, you would remember back in the States here, that being loyal to corporate in the 80s and 90s was a big thing. They took care of you. And, maybe it was in the UK as well, Anne Marie, but
it was, yeah.
Back then, they took care of you, and everybody had like 15, 20, 25 years on the job. And you always thought, wow, I want to be that person. So my very first corporate career job, professional wise, was 18 years on the job. And it was it started in the late 80s into the 90s. And I was a young woman that did not have a college education because my family life was challenged and we didn't have a lot of money. And my dad and I lived together. He got full custody of me after some divorce back in the day. And he didn't have a lot of money. But you know what he taught me was heart and soul and to work hard. And if you can work hard and show them that you have fire in the belly, they'll promote you. He always told me they'll recognize you. They'll see you. So this first stop on my 30-year corporate journey, 18 years, probably about, I'd say 6 years into it, I proved that I could get promoted from a customer service representative to an assistant manager. And it was a finance company. We did secondary auto loans for anybody that had challenging personal credit. Maybe they had some credit hiccups back in the day and their credit scores were low. We were at that time the second chance loan shop because there were no GMACs or Ford Motor Credits back then. It was just banks or a finance company. So we took on that paper, and I learned how to look at credit, and I learned how to look at financials and budgets on the personal side. And along with that, if the customer that we did the auto loan for paid slow, we had to collect the payments. So I would collect payments. And if they really paid slow, we would take them to court and get judgment so we could repossess the car. And back in those days, we didn't hire repo companies. There just wasn't repo companies. So when we repossessed a car in those days, didn't have cell phones back then, ladies and gentlemen. I know it sounds crazy. I had to make sure I had coins in my car, which I think we all have coins in our car still today. And I would travel the city of Milwaukee looking for the car that I had judgment on to repossess. And I would do that with my branch manager. He always took me on the call, and then we'd find the car, go to the local payphone, call our tow truck guy, drop in the coins. Hey, Jerry, we found the car. Meet me on such and such corner. And then we go to the car, hook it up while my manager would hold the judgment paper because the borrower would always come out very upset that we were taking the car. So, I wanted to get promoted to branch manager. And that was important to me because I did not have that college education on the bottom of my resume. And I knew from what my dad always told me, work hard, work your way up, and they'll recognize you. They did promote me to that credit manager position, but now I wanted to take it a step further and be a branch manager where I'm driving in the car and my assistants are in the passenger seat like I was with my branch manager. And in the 90s, I was flat out told, and you could get away with this back then, that no, we don't promote women. And furthermore, you don't have a college education, so we can't promote you. Well, if you know that I was there for 18 years and this was 6 years into it, you knew I found my way to be positively persistent, keep showing up with results, keep showing them that I could have better results than my male peers that were assistant managers with college educations. I surpassed them and was the number one assistant manager consistently. So I kept going back to my male managers and higher up supervisors. I want to be promoted, and they knew I wasn't going away. So they gave me the opportunity to take on the branch manager position for a 6-month probationary period. And again, they could get away with that. They didn't pay me anything extra. They said, go to this branch and be the manager and let's see how you handle it for 6 months. Well, you know darn well Deb was going to do a good job because I wanted that position. And sure enough, they promoted me. But here's the deal. They promoted me, but not with the same pay that the men were getting. And the only reason why I know that's a fact is because my husband today, we ended up getting married like toward my 17th, 18th year. So we started dating, and we used to go on repossessions together. I'd go in his car when he went looking for his, and then he'd come in my car, and we ended up getting married actually. And I knew he made a lot more money than I did because I was told it is what it is. You're a woman and you don't have a college education. So I had to live with that, Walt and Anne Marie. But that's okay because I could put it at the top of my resume that I had this position and put my accolades and show that I was promoted up because I didn't have that education at the bottom. So that was the start of this 30-year journey. So before I move on, any questions so far?
No, not for me. Anne-Marie, how about you?
Oh my God, it just feels like the last 20 years of my life. You're a woman. You don't get paid as much as a man.
Yes. And they knew it. They knew my husband and I, because we were dating, and they knew we were dating, and they said, we don't pay you more. It is what it is. But they got away with that because you could back then, right?
Of course you could, yeah.
Yeah. Here's the thing though, you can get away with it today, and they say you don't know about it, but people talk, or I don't know.
Oh,
but
yeah.
We got work to do. Okay. So after that 18-year stint, I decided it was time for me to move into the banking world. I was working on secondary finance, secondary credit. I wanted to experience good credit. So I thought, well, I'm going to diversify my experience and move into banking, retail banking, and then business banking, and SBA introduced me to working with small business owners. From that 18-year job, I moved around from bank to bank many times. And a lot of times it was because, and you might recall this, both of you, sometimes in order to get an increase, you had to leave and come back to the same job to get paid more money, because what happened in the 2000s and such, we were getting like 1% increases, and that was it. And all of a sudden the loyalty that corporate had for employees of 15, 20, 25 years started to drop, right? That's right. Poof.
Yeah.
So that was happening, and I noticed more of the same regarding a very male-dominated industry in the banking industry, and more so for the white corporate professional. And this is no punch in the face to you, Walter, or the other gentlemen out there that may be listening, because my husband is one of them, and I can't punch him in the face, and I won't. I love him too much. But my point is, it was hard to navigate as a female in a male-dominated industry through all those stops. And I know many times I worked for supervisors that just didn't like women. And the team, the culture of silence was real. And what I mean by the culture of silence, a lot of the women that were support to the commercial banking team, I was the only woman on a lot of teams. A lot of the support gals knew I was pretty much treated differently at all stops, including my most recent last stop. And a lot of women out there are going through it today, right now, and I know of it. And the issue that I like to be a voice of reason, and I like to share how can we get better as a team, and this is where we're weak. Well, that didn't work when it came to unity and diversity, to promote within and to treat women and men and the color of skin all equal versus just one. I was trying to get that message positively sent to the HR departments, and in a great way, not bashing, in a positively persistent way, as I'm talking right now. What did that do? It put a target on my back. HR, in my opinion, represents the owners of the bank, the higher up managers, and they're protecting the bank, and they want to get rid of anybody that's going to be a target on the bank's balance sheet, so to speak, really. So that was difficult. And along with that, and that's where I'm going into my career, I learned how to do business lending, and I was introduced to SBA lending. And through my journey, I always believe in quality versus quantity. And as we moved forward into the decades of my career, now it was all about the push, about the numbers. It wasn't anything about the employees anymore. Could you make good money as an SBA lender? Oh, absolutely. Think of all the PPP loans. I've got a story behind that. Don't let me forget to tell you about that story. But the money could be made, but there was also more of a disparate treatment and more of the same of trying to climb the ladder and you just couldn't because the guys know the guys and they've been doing this for decades, right? Well, what I started to notice was not only was the disparate treatment inside the walls, inside corporate, and with the people that worked there, the front line started to become, and I shouldn't say started, always were disparate with certain genders that wanted to apply for a business loan and or a certain color of skin. And I'm not saying this is everybody. I'm being very careful here. But what I want to get out in the world is that it is happening, the disparate treatment internally and externally. So this business acquisition financing is where I'm going to go to now, because that is my business. And I'm going to explain that. I took all my hurts of the past of 30 years, my own internal hurts and my own hurts of witnessing the treatment of others. And I decided to create solutions for today. And that is my business. And I practice unity and diversity. I will help all color of skin, anybody that wants to purchase, finance, and establish business. I'll help any genders. And that's the message that I'm sending. And that's my business today. So there you have it. I hope I explained that in enough detail to get you to understand where I am today. We can talk more about the difference between starting up, like Walt said, versus acquiring something that's already working. We're going to get to that because that's some good stuff that should be fair and equal for everybody to learn about and know, so we can level the playing field to have a very diverse country, if not world, when it comes to equal opportunities for all.
All right. Well, actually, that is where I want to go. I want to go more into this idea of acquiring an existing business. Mm-hmm. And where I sit, I don't even care what your ethnic background is or gender or anything like that. I think this is for anybody. White Anglo-Saxon males, you too. I mean, this is literally everybody.
That's right.
I think it's important to recognize that it's an excellent alternative to the business startup approach, which is what we normally hear about, because that's actually a harder one. It's harder to start a business than it is to take over a business. And I don't say that as somebody who's experienced taking over in a business, because I've kind of taken over one business, but that's not really quite the same thing. I'll tell you that story if you'd like. But it's not quite the same thing as what you're talking about. You're talking about going in and essentially buying a business from somebody else who's already started it. Yeah. And that kind of situation is one that most of us will tend to, I'm going to say, dismiss as a possibility, largely because of the financing situation. How am I going to pay for this? How am I going to be able to, make the whole thing work? I don't really know how to make it work, so I'm just going to give up before I get started. Mm-hmm. But for anyone who has ever been in business, you kind of look at it, you say, that really makes a whole lot more sense to go that way. Because the people who started that business, they got most of the landmines out of the way. You have a much clearer path right now. Yes, you're buying it with cash and you want to make your cash back and then some, but they did the heavy lifting. That's
right. You're right on. That's the message. And to tack on to what you said, a lot of, individuals out there today, cause this is a market anybody can apply for. Let me just say this. There is a silver tsunami happening right now. And you may ask, what is a silver tsunami? Well, 11,000 baby boomers, 11,000 baby boomers per day are retiring. We're living longer. And the baby boomers that are retiring, many of them are small business owners. And they've owned these businesses for a good 15, 20, 25 years. Well, their adult children, many of them just don't want to take the business over. And I think a lot of it, in my opinion, is they saw mom or dad or both of them, like you said, Walt, putting in the blood, sweat, and tears those first 2, 3 to 5 years of startup. They bootstrap, they penny pinch, they probably worked 80 hours a week and then some just to make this business happen. And God bless them. Because if we didn't have their strength and wisdom where they survived that startup stage, there wouldn't be this opportunity today of 11,000 baby boomers with business owners selling in that per day. They're looking for the Gen Xers, the millennials, the younger leaders who have fire in the belly, no matter what your gender is, no matter what the color of your skin is. We just have to teach everyone, how do you get there? And that's my job. And how do you get there? And how does it work? In a nutshell, I'll explain. The business that you're buying, the small business that's been operated by a baby boomer today, they are earning a salary right now because over the years, they built up enough revenues, enough loyal employees, enough loyal customers. They diversified their customer base. They're doing it well. Not all do it well, but many of them are doing it well. So when you take over that business and it's selling, you got to come up with capital. You got to come up with cash. How do you get cash? Large cash. We're talking transactions that are 500,000 up to 3 or 5 million. That's a lot of cash, and not everybody has that kind of cash. Well, in the United States, there is an affiliate of our government known as the SBA, which stands for Small Business Administration. And what they do is solicit the retention and growth of our small businesses in our country by telling all the various banks in America that are big, from Chase and Wells Fargo to middle-sized banks to the community banks that are, giving back to your schools, to the credit unions, any of those banks and those lenders that offer business loans with SBA, they give the money to the borrower, and the SBA guarantees those loans up to 75% if the business goes bad. So banks will swing more on those business acquisitions, knowing if the deal goes bad, the government is going to pay them up to 75% of what that loan balance is. Now, what is the biggest fear that people have when they think of purchase financing a business? Think of this. When you purchase finance a house, you're a first-time home buyer, your budget, your personal budget, they're looking at your income, your W-2 wages. They're looking at your debt, your personal debt. Do you have a car payment? Do you have, what do things look like? Because your money is what's going to pay that house payment. Now, when you purchase finance a business and you transition in as the new owner, the current owner, he's earning a salary that he's already paying himself that's expense before the bottom line profits. That can be transferred to you, the new owner. So in a startup, you don't even earn anything probably for 2 to 3 years. When you purchase finance a business, that owner's salary, who's selling is going to be transferred to you. Then the rest of the expenses, utilities, payroll, marketing, they're all in the middle. And then there's this bottom line called the net income, the profits, the free cash flow. Well, the SBA tells all the banks, if these businesses can prove based on their tax returns that they have enough free cash flow after all the bills are paid, including the new owner's salary that's transferred to him, that's the income that pays for the SBA business acquisition loan project. When I explain that to people that inquire with me, it's like a sense of relief. They're like, oh, I thought we had to pay for it out of what we're earning today. Well, yeah, that's nice backup to have in case the business is slow. But if you transition in and there's proof historically by those tax returns that this business, if operated the same today, and we have a good owner transitioning in that loves people and isn't going to blow up the whole place where they all walk out, you're going to have enough income to pay that loan project, to pay the seller, to pay the SBA loan payment. And the banks are going to give the new owner working capital in that loan for the first 3 months for payroll, rent expense. There's short-term operating expenses that the new owner is going to incur. And a lot of people think, how am I going to pay the bills if I buy this business? The bank's going to give you the money to get you out of the gate strong, and you just put money into the business deposit account as you grow for future working capital. That was a lot. I just gave you the fire hose. But I hope it made sense. I was trying to be very, precise with how I was walking you through that. But isn't that amazing? And here's the thing. Not enough people know about this. Nobody sent us to school for this. Nobody taught us this in school or the universities, right? Right, Walt? I mean,
that's true.
Thank you. And I have this funny feeling. I thought about this the other day. All this AI technology, people are losing jobs, especially if you're in technology. There's a lot of people that are concerned that things are going to change and we're all going to lose our jobs. I'm thinking in my mind, man, what a time for this silver tsunami, because it's happening now and it's going to be happening for the next 5 years. All these businesses are selling and they need new people to take over the ownership to keep them alive and thriving. Because if we don't, we're going to be owned by Amazon and AI. I'm scared about that. So let's keep these businesses alive and get these transactions rolling.
Not to mention the fact that that's your business. So of course you want that to happen. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
So you did. I mean, obviously that is kind of a fire hose, and people were hearing a lot of information there. To a certain extent, I want to break that down, but I think probably the smart thing for somebody who does want to investigate that piece of it in more depth is probably just to reach out to you directly and have a conversation, because that's not really something that you can break down generically. You have to kind of go, step by step with a particular business model and a particular business that's up for sale and all that kind of thing.
You know it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I normally bring this in later on in the show, but I'm going to bring it in now. Somebody who wants to reach out to you about this, how do they find you? How do they contact you?
Mm-hmm. Well, my website is my name, debcurtis.com. And if you go to my LinkedIn profile, that's my favorite social media channel, although I'm on all channels. But LinkedIn, you'll find me, Deb Curtis. If you go under my photo, there's a hyperlink that will attach you to all my social channels. And that's how you can get a hold of me. It seems to be I'm more on LinkedIn than I am in my own email box these days, because it's constant movement, but it's fun. I enjoy it.
Excuse me. And so I'll make sure we also get the link to your website into the show notes as well. So there'll be an easy way for people to get there.
Yeah.
One thing I want to talk about, though, because I do want to go back to this idea. I think it's a really fascinating idea of buying an existing business. And as you pointed out, with baby boomers retiring, there's a whole bunch of them that are coming out on the market that people don't even know are out on the market. So this is important information. But there's also a piece that comes into my mind based on past interviews that I've done with people on a variety of different topics and different backgrounds and so forth, which is that we learn best under adversity. We don't tend to learn a whole lot when everything's going well, but we learn a whole bunch when things are going badly. And that's one of the big advantages that the entrepreneur who has succeeded to the point where they have a successful business to sell, they've got all that background that they've learned. Mm-hmm. The person who's buying it doesn't have that background. Mm-hmm. So that, in my mind, that raises the obvious question. How does that person who's buying into the business actually benefit from what the entrepreneur who came before them learned?
Yeah. Yes. Because that's key. But you're so right on, Walt. Well, here's the good news. The SBA allows the buyer to negotiate a transition period with the seller. And if it's a good seller, and most of them are, baby boomers are very, very much open to wanting their baby of 20 years protected. They want their customers taken care of. They want their employees taken care of. So they're willing to transition in the new owner, and you can negotiate 30 days. You can negotiate 6 months. You can negotiate up to 12 months. Now, the SBA recently changed some rules that are supposed to come out August 11th, I believe. And there may be some ownership structure changes where a seller can stay on and it doesn't need to be 100% total buyout. Yeah. Soon to tell. If there's one thing we know about our government and the SBA, they say something's going to change and then it doesn't. So we're all told, just focus on what the current policies are. And if they do change, they'll probably be tweaked. And then you got to remember all the banks that do lending to get the SBA guarantee, they all have their own credit policies. They might not like some of the changes that SBA is okaying, so to speak, and they may say no to some stuff. So, but anyways, transition periods are very important. In my opinion, if you're coming across a seller that just wants to sell and get the heck out within 24 hours, I don't like that. It's telling me, what is it that you don't want to be around here for? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want the owner to show you the ropes, introduce you to the employees. You want them to be around. You can negotiate a lot between the seller's attorney and the buyer's attorney. And I help advise to some recommendations as to what to do. There's nothing better than a seller staying on and ensuring that the buyer successfully transitions in. And I've even seen some buyers that have anniversaries and of certain success that the company has had, and they'll invite the original founder back, and the customers love it. So there's a good camaraderie with the founder and then the new owner that takes over. There can be some really decent relationships to keep that company growing in the community it serves.
Yeah, it's often called institutional memory, and that institutional memory is completely invaluable. There's no way to put a price tag on it. There's no way to overestimate how important it is, because that institutional memory usually isn't written down anywhere.
Right. It's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you can go read the company manual on, how did the founder solve this particular issue when it came up 14 years ago. I mean, it's just not there. Yeah. There's no record of it. Right. So that's one part of it. And the second part of it is the person who is buying the company, they don't even know what issues came up before. All they know is that there's an existing company that they check the books out. Maybe they had an advisor like you, which would be a good idea to help them navigate the channels and so forth. But they really don't know what happened other than whatever they happened to gather from a conversation they had with the founder while they were negotiating with him. I mean, it's very limited information. Right. So that institutional memory is truly invaluable, and it's not something that's easy to capture. So I like the idea of finding ways to keep the former owner involved on a regular basis for as long as you can do it, because you need that conversation. Hey, did you ever run into this situation? Oh yeah, we had that happen back in 2014. Blah, blah, blah. You gotta have that.
You do. And the underwriters appreciate it too. Walt. They want to see that. And some sellers will offer to be in person, maybe the first 60 days and then as needed by phone call, up to the final year. And, it does work out when it's a good transition. I've seen some really decent relationships between sellers and buyers. And you're right. How do you remember? You can't write it all down. But then at the same time, I see a lot of buyers today do a good job. I always tell them, don't shock the system by changing everything when you transition in.
Oh God, no.
Right? You want to, because everybody will leave. I mean, Anne-Marie, you might remember supervisors in the past when a favorite one left and then a new one came in and everyone's like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Right? So, where am I going with this? Where was I going? I lost my thought.
You say you're not changing everything, just doing little things.
Yes. Thank you. Websites. Believe it or not, many baby boomers today have these successful small businesses and they don't even have a website or a social media page. Something that simple is something that the new owners are seeing, and we talk about it, and the underwriter will want to see in a business plan, what are you going to do the first year that you're in to kind of transition in? Well, of course, a website and the social media pages are helpful, right? But isn't that amazing that baby boomers lived by the old phone that I talked about? We didn't have cell phones and not Post-it notes. It was just pieces of paper on the desk that wrote notes, and that's how they did business. So efficiencies and technology can help improve as long as you don't shock the system too fast. Because who remembers when employers give you new computer systems to learn and everyone's like, oh my gosh. But over time you figure it out and it does work out. But baby steps with transitioning.
Baby steps are the key. And I can talk about that because I ended up taking over my ex-wife's business. So I experienced that directly. And in fact, while we were still together, I was also, during that time period, I was taking over running it and introducing IT and introducing, like you say, taking it away from all the pieces of paper on the desk. It's a good way of describing it. And the only thing that made that happen was doing it in baby steps. If I had tried to do even larger than baby steps, like little larger, it probably would have destroyed the system.
Yeah.
Now in that case, it was partly because of the resistance of my ex-wife. She didn't want to make kind of changes happening real fast. But part of it is the resistance of the rest of the customer base and the employees.
Right.
Because they're used to doing things in a certain way. So literally what you need to do every step of the way with every little change, you don't do them all at once, you do them one at a time. And with each one, you get buy-in. You get buy-in from the employees first. You get buy-in from the customers second. And then you go implement. And if you do it in that order, then you don't have that big shock. It's a little shock. It's still a shock.
Yeah.
But it doesn't kill you. It's more like, oh, something just happened. Something just changed rather than, oh my God, that's a tsunami coming through.
The best coaches are ones that have been through it, Walt, and you'd be a good coach to teach this to buyers. Talk to someone that's been through the transactions and they'll tell you the highs and the lows. So.
It's important to remember too, there's a reason why they had that net income that was at that level. There's a reason why the owner was able to take a regular paycheck to themselves. It's because what they were doing before was working. We human beings have a tendency to look at something and say, well, it should be done differently, and not realize and recognize that in what we might have thought of as dysfunction, there was functionality. Yeah. Functionality was producing desired results. And it could be a really big mistake to just jump right in and say, well, I'm going to change all this and everything's going to be better. And then you find out that it's not.
Right.
That actually happens more often than not. Somebody goes in and just does big changes. They find that it actually breaks more things than it fixes because they made assumptions that weren't even valid assumptions, but they didn't know it.
Right. Yeah, the bank underwriters will do an interview with the buyer before the final credit decision just to get a sense. Do they know their business plan? They want to know their character. And, if you come off that you're going to just change everything and my way or the highway, you're not going to be approved for the SBA loan. So
when they say character, what they mean is, they're evaluating you for how you're going to run the business. That's what they mean by character.
Right. So big. Character is huge, huge. Can I tell you a story about,
We love stories.
This is a good story. This was two guys. They were good friends, and they were applied with me 2 years ago to Purchase Finance, a real profitable business owned by a baby boomer. And one of the partners, he was going to be the face of the business, working with the employees and working with the customers that are long time. They've been around a long time because it's a baby boom owned business. The other partner was going to handle the payroll and the behind the scenes. He was going to keep his job, but kind of do all the administrative stuff. The baby boomer that was selling did both. He worked with the employees, obviously, and the customers, and he did all the administrative stuff. Well, the interview time came, and both partners interviewed with the chief of credit. And the fella that was doing all the administrative stuff was who I was dealing with for the majority of the ride, preparing the package and putting it all together. And he would tell me what his partner was doing. And I'll tell you, I made a mistake. I didn't meet the other partner by Zoom. I just didn't. I trusted the guy that I met by Zoom, the other fella, that he's telling me he's of good character and everything's good.
Yeah.
Trust, but always verify, because I learned my lesson hard. Chief of credit interviewed both of them, but at different times. That's his strategy, because he wants to question each one of them,
right,
so one doesn't cover up the other. Well, the first interview happened with the fella that I always was talking to. I'm like, you're going to love him. He's a great guy. He was good character. I felt real confident. And then the next day he interviewed the partner that was going to take over being the face of the business, working with the customers. And he said that interview, my chief of credit said, was probably one of the worst interviews he's ever done.
Wow.
He said it was a Zoom call. It looked like he just got up out of bed. His hair was messy, and the dog was barking. The kids were crying, and the wife was in the background dropping F-bombs, yelling at him to take the garbage out. He got up a couple times to leave to try to quiet them down and came back, and he said it was complete chaos.
Wow.
And
that's the face of the company.
Yeah,
that
right.
was the face of the company. It's exactly what he said, Anne-Marie. And the chief of credit called me and said, Deb, I'm sorry. I can't move forward on this. And I couldn't disagree with him. I was just like, and I learned my lesson. Yes, we learn lessons, and that was a lesson learned. If there's partners, I need to see them all. I need to understand the character, Walt, like you said. And that's a true story. And that
I believe you. Yeah, I believe you. I want to take that a step further, and you may or may not have a story associated with this, but I want to know what your take is, because from my perspective, now I run a gardening service business. So I have a bunch of gardeners, and I have an estimator and an office manager and that sort of thing. My business is extremely dependent upon the skills of the gardeners. Okay. So I have an extra incentive to go this mile that I'm about to talk about. Okay. But for me, the most important asset in my company is my staff. It's more important than anything else I have. And well, personally, I've hired everybody who's on the staff, so I know them all real well. If I were going to buy any kind of business, whether it's gardening service or any other kind, doesn't matter what kind of business it is, my take is I would want to meet the employees before I put in a final bid.
Yeah.
I want to meet them. I want to talk with them. I want to get a sense of how they feel within the current structure. Now, that's not going to be an easy sell to the current owner, by the way. The current owner is not going to necessarily feel good about you talking to the employees, because the first thought in his mind is, well, they're going to steal my employees away, start their own business, and now I won't have a business that's worth anything, or something along that line. And so it might be a real legitimate concern in terms of how you actually make that happen. But if you can make it happen, oh my goodness, I think it's probably the most important thing you can do. Because that employee is going to tell you what the truth is about that company. That's
right. And some sellers will allow it to happen. Others won't. And that's where, I think your due diligence has to somehow dig a little bit deeper somehow. It's a gamble. It really is. I would want to talk to the employees as well. And back to your gardeners, they're your business because you made it sound like they know what they're doing with the gardening, right? And,
thank goodness, because I don't. I mean, it's
right?
very important that they know.
Yeah, exactly. So we call them, and you would get this, key employees.
They are key employees. Yes, they fit
Right.
that qualification perfectly.
If you don't have them on your team, you don't have a business. It's kind of like an Italian restaurant. I've seen plenty of those in my time, and the original cook was the owner, and now he's selling, but he's selling the recipes too. I'm sorry. The same recipe sometimes doesn't taste the same from a different cook, right?
Yeah. So true.
It's true. I've seen restaurants close a year later, bought out with a different owner that's going to cook. So same story. You got to be really careful knowing when you buy a business. If you were to buy Walt's gardening business, you might want to give some kind of a retention bonus as the new owner to the gardeners to make sure they don't go away because they're key employees, right? Same thing with the Italian restaurant. Train up. Is there an assistant manager that knows the menu and the recipes that's been working under the current owner? If so, dig in a little bit deeper that way. But isn't that something, Walt? You have to really understand the employees and how they are the business, right? And that's
in many ways they are. Yeah.
They are. But here's the good news. The best business owners train up their employees to run the business. And there's a lot of intangible value to you, the owner, when you sell the business. There's value in those gardeners, and buyers will see that. So,
and any kind of business, I don't care what kind of business it is. I really believe that's going to be true. You could be a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You're still going to have your list of key employees, and those key employees are musts.
They are.
If you try to do anything without them, you're setting yourself up for disaster. You
are. Sometimes we will structure those key employees even to have like a 1 or 2% ownership piece of the business to keep them in with a signed employee contract so they don't go away. Because if they go away, you have no revenue. You don't have any good plants growing.
Which also means that what we're really talking about here is the relationship, because especially with a business like mine, the relationship between me and my gardening staff is critical. Without that, the whole thing falls apart. And now my business is a little bit different from others in that sense, but almost any company, your relationship between the person running the company and the people who are the key employees is also going to be critical. It's so critical that if you don't have good relationships with them, regardless of whether you keep them on staff, if you don't have good relationships with them, it's just as if you didn't have them on staff. Right. In other words, the relationship is actually more important than the person in some ways.
Yeah, right on.
So I think you really need to also make sure you spend a little time building relationship with them to find out, is this somebody you can work with? Is this somebody who likes you and you like them and you feel like you have confidence in them and they have confidence in you? Yeah. Because that's going to drive the whole train.
Yes. Gosh. And we know how one employee can also change the whole culture, right? And you just don't know that till you buy the business. It's like, oh boy. Yeah. Hopefully that's cleaned up before somebody buys the business, but be careful because 80% of the businesses listed on the market today do not qualify for bank financing for the buyer because either the baby boomer didn't report all the profits to the IRS or there's other hurts. The key employees are gone or he just didn't succession plan properly and was ill and the numbers tank. So there's a lot of businesses for sale that just don't qualify for the buyer to get the financing. Cause remember, it's that bottom line we were talking about. And if it's not reported, there's no income. And here's the deal. I think of my dad, Walt. He's passed now, but he didn't want to pay taxes to the IRS. He always and he wasn't a business owner, but he wanted to find ways to write off everything he could. Yeah. Well, that's how small business owners are, right? And
awesome.
It's fair though. It is fair per the IRS. although they said they were going to hire 86,000 auditors sometime, but then that got pulled with the budget, the debt ceiling and such. So what I say to sellers and to business brokers, because they get frustrated that banks won't finance at the price that the business owners want, because that bottom line cash flow wasn't reported properly to the IRS. Maybe the baby boomer reported his cash flow on all those pieces of paper on the desk somewhere that we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. And that's where he says the cash flow is, but that's not reported to the IRS. Mm. So, be careful out there when you're searching for a business. And if the seller got away with not paying taxes because he wrote off a ton of things that were just made up, that's fine. You didn't pay taxes, but when it's time to sell your business, you can't get a price that's well worth it because the income wasn't there. You can't have your cake and eat it too, is what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense?
Well, you're also setting up the potential buyer of the business too. He could get an unexpected tax liability, but we don't have time to get into that one. We'll leave that one alone for the moment. But Anne-Marie, I mean, this is me. I pretty much have shut you out of this conversation because I am very interested in this. But as you're listening here, what have you been thinking about?
You know, I love the whole opportunity of it and the fact that it's keeping businesses going, it's keeping your whole system going, is giving it back into, you know, keeping the whole money flow going. But the similarities I see from like 30 years ago working and in a corporate kind of area, and also like all these old businesses, it's all about, it's just a shame that the personal aspect seems to be disappearing. Like you say, looking after your staff, valuing your staff. And even in the corporate companies now, because we don't have that, I'm going to stay here for 25 years, you do lose that knowledge. So you'll find like 5 years along, people are going, we're going to do this project. And the people who've been there 7 years ago, we did that 5 years ago, it didn't work. But nobody listens. And I just feel we just lose so much. It just feels very impersonal. So I find that.
I hear what you're saying, Anne. I said that earlier today on another show. It's like our country's had these rules and regulations in place for everybody to follow. And it's kind of like when you're on a diet, you follow the rules in the beginning. Well, all the employers followed the rules and such in the beginning when these laws were implemented. And somewhere along the line, like when you're on a diet, you just start to lose interest in the rules and things just kind of lose the meaning. And I'm hoping we can bring it back and kind of raise the awareness once again.
Exactly. It sounds like you're giving back people opportunities, one, to sell the business, two, people to own their own business, and then just have, you know, flourish and make little changes and just flourish and turn something then into yours. But again, keeping it all personal, looking after yourself. So it just sounds amazing. It's a really good scheme.
Oh, thank you. It is a win-win really for the seller, for the buyer, and for the community where the business is located in, and just for the country. And I know other countries where I've been a guest on, they want to hear what it is that our SBA, the affiliate of our government, does, and they want to take that to their leaders to see if they can put something together similar to that in other countries. We got to keep small businesses alive, and we got to support them. And I will until the day I'm called home, because I want my children and my grandchildren to have the same opportunity to be a small business owner in the future. And, you know, corporate offers a lot of opportunities. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of great opportunities in corporate, but let's keep supporting small businesses because we want to transfer those businesses to the younger generations because that will keep it alive.
Exactly. And I think people want to support local businesses nowadays, I feel. I think, you know, they'd rather go to their small shops than the big ones that overcharge you now, and like give your money to somebody who's actually going to benefit from it rather than the big ones.
Yeah, I like that.
Really good stuff. Anne-Marie, does the UK have anything similar to the Small Business Administration?
Not that I have heard. No.
Deb, have you heard anything for the UK?
No.
No.
I haven't heard anything, any country. I was on in Australia. They really want to see something like this as well. Cause the same thing is happening. Baby boomers are retiring in your countries as well. And banks are doing financing. One gal in Canada that I know, her name is Roxanne. She says they do it similar, just without the guarantee. Their banks are willing to take on more risk, but without that guarantee. So I find it interesting because we're in a time right now, obviously we all are, with possibly we're in a recession or we're heading in a recession. So the word on the street is the banks are all tightening up those credit policies again, which isn't helpful for small businesses, especially with these transactions. There are baby boomers who want to sell, but they don't want to drop their price, but the buyers need them to drop the price because the interest rates are high. So it's kind of a little bit stagnant right now, the transactions, because it's just that economy feeling is, where are we going? Do you feel that, Walt? I mean, do you feel like, where are we going with all this?
Honestly, I don't give that a lot of thought.
Yeah.
I really don't. In terms of running this business, I'm much more locally focused than that.
Good for you.
I guess it's partly because we survived the pandemic, which a lot of businesses didn't do. I figure if we could survive that, we can survive anything. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. And you've got a message there, Walt, to send to a lot of business owners that might be listening. Don't listen to the nightly news. Just focus on.
Well, that's true for anybody. You don't have to be a business owner. This is like general advice for the entire world population.
Right?
Stay away from the nightly news. It's not healthy for you.
I think about, I tell this story, 2 pizza restaurants on the same block during the pandemic. In one pizza restaurant, the owner thought, oh my gosh, the pandemic, we were downsizing how many people could be in the dining room. Then all of a sudden we got to close the lobby. He just shut down his business and he's like, I'm running away from this. This is not going to work. There's nothing I can do. The other pizza restaurant, same block across the street, pandemic, same story. What are we going to do? Dining room's closed. They implemented a website with an order taking system on it that was really efficient. And they hired full-time drivers to deliver, and they put in a system for carry out. So get this, they survived the pandemic because they looked at it as opportunity to create something different for the business. And today that same pizza restaurant is growing more with larger profits than before the pandemic because all of those systems in place for carry out, for delivery, and now the dining room is back open. All of it is working as one, and it's growing faster than ever before. So that's the difference between 2 mental mindsets of 2 pizza restaurant owners. One looked at it as, it's not my fault, I give up, I'm done. The other one looked at it as opportunity, and he's thriving today.
I love the way you said that. I'll say it in a slightly different way. There's a tendency, and this is going to be true in all markets, but it's also true in the business buying and selling market. The tendency is to look for that which is thriving and to buy it. And to believe that because it's thriving, you're making the best decision. Whereas in truth, all businesses go through strong times and lean times. And it's very rare for a business to go through all strong times. That doesn't happen in most cases, and it never happens over the long haul. Yeah. So you're always going to have a downtime. So if you're buying when all is going well, you're basically buying at the peak of the market.
Yeah.
Which means you're setting yourself up for a decline that's going to happen at some point, and that's when you're going to be disappointed. Whereas the time to buy is when things aren't so good, not when they're devastated. You definitely don't want to buy when it's devastated. But when things they've been in decline or a bad thing has happened of some kind that has adversely affected the business, you have to look at what that was. I mean, if it's critical to the way the business operates and it's something that you can't readily shift, probably better to stay away from that one. But if you can find one where, for instance, they got adversely affected by the pandemic, and the person who was running during the pandemic didn't make the kind of changes. They acted like the first pizza parlor owner. Basically didn't make the kinds of shifts. That's actually a great opportunity. That's the time to buy.
True.
That's what you want to look for.
If you can find a bank that will finance it, that's the ticket.
That leads to about another hour's worth of conversation.
I have to say though,
that would be a really good conversation to have.
People do buy those businesses though.
Oh, yeah.
With, venture capital, private equity, they're swooping that stuff up to turn it around because they know what to do, and boom, it just is thriving. So yeah, it's a good deal.
Let me add, we can't do an hour, but we can do a minute. Let me ask one question, to kind of zero in on it. How valuable do you think it is for the person buying the business to already know the elements of the business?
To already know the what? The
elements, the basic business that's being done.
Yes, I think it's very important to know, not that they have to follow, but to know what it is that worked in the past and what didn't work in the past. Can you adjust it? Yes, but with those baby steps that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
If you're going to go in there with Godzilla steps and shake it up, you're going to lose.
I don't care how good you are.
Thank you. Yeah. Elements to know I love what you said. And that's a good thing to keep that owner with you with that transition period. Cause if there is funky things that happen, you've got a lifeline to call and help me out here. And I guarantee you the baby boomers that want that business to do well, they're going to talk with you and help you out.
One thing that we have a lot here on the program, and we're already over time, so I know I'm kind of rushing against a past deadline right now, but we get lots of people who are, therapists and life coaches and business coaches and, relationship coaches. And there's like coaching coming out of our ears around here, which is actually a great thing. One of the themes that comes out of all of that is virtually every coach. Now, this may sound like it's a little self-serving, but I think it's actually true. Virtually every coach says, don't try to do any kind of major change in life without a coach, without somebody to guide you. If you're trying to do it yourself, you're basically cutting yourself off at the knees, trying to figure out how to take the next step. Mm-hmm. And I want to see if that is essentially your opinion as well. Is it important to hire a coach who has the experience of guiding somebody through a business purchasing process in order to do something like this?
Gosh. You're reading my mind. You're reading my mind. I look at a lot of businesses that buyers want to purchase finance, and there is a definite trend. And all of my professionals out there that are listening and watching, you'll be proud of me to say this because I'm an advocate for them. Any business owner that hired a coach, we call them a business financial advisor, an exit planner. There's all kinds of small business support out there that you can get. And every time I look at a business that's selling, if they have an expense item in the middle of their tax returns about business advisory, most often that's a business I can finance for the buyer. Now, yeah. But now we go to the business owner that doesn't want to pay taxes, and he has 2 personal automobile expenses on his business tax returns, which are 2 luxury cars, one for him and one for his wife that doesn't work in the business. That's the business I can't finance because they cut the bottom line. Now, some banks will allow you to add back those funky personal expenses.
Yeah, that's starting to get a little risky then. Yeah.
Some. Thank you. It is. That's why I say some banks.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game. It's a game.
Yeah.
And you got to know what kind of deck you're dealing with before you buy the full deck.
So you indicated the importance of the person who is selling the business having a business coaching. How about the person who's buying the business?
Yes, definitely. The best time to prepare to sell a business is the day you buy one. And in the business plan that I have my buyers prepare for the SBA underwriters, there is a section in the business plan that's called succession planning and who are my go-to people in case something happens to me. That's really important. Underwriters are looking for that. Yes. everybody needs, in my opinion, a coach, whether it's personal or professional. I think I can do it all on my own. And the moment I speak to people or just collaborate, like with you, Walt, and with you, Ann, I learn something. That's what it's about. We learned something. We heard what some of the trends you did, Walt, why you've got key employees and they grow, they're the gardeners. We learned. If a business owner's listening, they're learning from us and we learn from them. And that's where it's at. We're humans. We were meant to collaborate together so we can all rise above.
That's a great way to express it. I love that. Thank you for that.
You got it.
Emery, tie it all together for us. Put a bow on top.
America, you have this. This is an amazing opportunity. Who knew these things were out there? So, yeah, if that was in my country, I'd certainly be reviewing that.
Now, good for you. I love that. I love that, Emery. It's a great program. Everyone should be. Mm-hmm.
And the Deb Curtis program is a pretty great program too. You can reach it at the debcurtis.com website. And Deb, thanks for joining us. One thing I want to tell you that I like to tell to all of our visitors here on the show, because you're clearly a giver. You like to give to people and help people out. And givers often, I mean, you're doing podcasts. I'm sure you do blog posts and social media and all this stuff. And you're constantly putting out content that is being consumed by people you'll never meet, you'll never see, and you're helping them in ways you don't even know about. And I think that needs to be remedied. So on behalf of those people you've never met and you've never seen, thank you for all you've been doing and what you continue to do, because you are making a difference in this world above and beyond the people you've helped to purchase a new business.
Well, I love that. And thank you for allowing me to be a voice to share my passions, and hopefully your audience learned something new today, because that's what it's all about.
Well, I learned something new, so they do by extension. It just happens that way. Right, Emery? Isn't that the way it works, right?
Yeah, every week there's just all this stuff goes in. It's amazing. I love it.
We learn this stuff, and the listeners learn it too. It's just that's the way it goes. Yeah, it's good.
And have fun seeing those red hot chili peppers.
Yeah.
Oh, I certainly will.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks, guys, very much. Thank you, podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.